flag salute.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone. Welcome. We will call the meeting to order. And the first thing we need to deal with is approval of the agenda. And I guess we'll start out, Mark. You, or I think, Mark, it's under James Masters here, but number 13, we're not going to deal with that tonight.
Correct.
Okay.
It'll be on the next meeting.
So with that,
Margaret may have to say a few words about it, or James, but we'll get there, we'll see.
okay. Well, then we'll just leave it on, won't
Okay.
worry about it. So is there a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
I move we approve the agenda.
I will second. Is there any discussion? No discussion. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Approved, or opposed, nay. And we will move on then. With regard to the consent agenda, is there anyone have any questions about any of the warrants or payroll or any of those, or the minutes for that matter?
I had a question on one of the warrants on page number 5. It was Pumps Tire in Hillsborough. I mean, it was like 2,600. Was that just something that we couldn't get local? I'm assuming it was some new tires, I think it said, or
Yes.
something that like our local doesn't have or doesn't carry. Gotcha. Okay.
I asked about that, I think, last time, Kevin, and what
Oh.
I was told that, first I didn't realize that, oh gosh.
Rod's Tire.
Rod's
Yeah.
Tire, that's what.
Right.
It used to be
Oh,
Rod's Tire,
Yep.
but they can accommodate big trucks, big tires, things that we don't have in local.
Farm tire. Okay. Gotcha.
What I was
I
told.
figured that, but I just thought I'd check.
Anything else? Okay, then is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move we approve the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion and second, discussion, no discussion, all in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Unanimous. With regard to matters included in this meeting's agenda, a lot of what we're doing is just going to be gaining information tonight, other than we would be taking some action on the cemetery wall repair, extending that area that we're going to be working on, and the Locust Street drainage program. But if anyone wishes to comment on any of the specific matters, this would be your opportunity. If not, I don't see anyone interested. We'll move on. And that takes us to Kansas Power Pool, and that takes us to James.
All right, thank you for having me tonight.
Thank you for being here.
So, as you're aware, we're going to install some solar panels, and that time is quickly approaching. A little update on that. This week, that's tomorrow actually, we're going to do a site visit about 4:30. The local, or the developers are going to be here to work out a few logistic issues and just, lay eyes on the site and see if there's any local issues we need to work out. So hopefully we can meet up with you guys there at 4:30. In March, solar panels are going to be delivered, so you'll see some equipment start showing up. So more to come on that. Before you is a couple of resolutions for a low to moderate income tax credit that we have found to be available to us on our solar projects. It's a 20% tax credit to our project, so it's pretty substantial. There's two resolutions. One is establishing a qualified low-income benefit program for the city of Marion, and then the second one is to establish that there is no interconnection agreement required for the solar facility, and I'll get into those. First off, the qualified low-income benefit program. So right now, I believe you probably work with LIEP or someone like that for some low-income energy credits. Maybe, maybe not.
Yes, we do.
We're getting a yes nod from the clerk.
Yeah, I'm sure the clerk knows that for sure. But that's a database of approved citizens of your community that qualify for that program. So the 20% tax credit that we can get will apply to your facility, where you can then give that money to your customers that are in a qualified benefit program. We are suggesting, like, it could be free and reduced lunch program or whatever you choose to get that database of people. So once KPP receives that tax credit, we'll calculate the value of that energy produced from the solar array versus what it costs to buy the energy, and then 50% of that delta can go back to those customers. Pretty good program.
Yeah.
And we may not get it, but we would like to have the paperwork in place in case we do get that. So the program customers, like I explained, are the low to moderate income customers, typically LIHEAP. The city should have access to that database. So how it would work, we can envision the first payment would be in the first quarter of 27. So those LIHEAP customers that you have in 2026 that realize the benefits of the energy could then qualify for those payments from you. KPP will do the work in determining what that credit is to each one of our solar facilities, and then we will pass those dollars off to the city to then distribute to those customers as a utility bill credit or however that works. Not real familiar with the LIHEAP program on your end, but.
So what are you asking of us? Or are you done? I don't mean to cut you off.
No, I was going to talk about the interconnection agreement, but
Okay, no, go
I'd be
ahead.
glad to answer any questions as we go along.
No, you keep going.
So-
I'll be just as ignorant at the end as I am right now, so.
Well, I've left some holes in here, realizing that I need to explain a few things a little
Okay.
more. So, the second resolution is for an interconnection agreement. So as we've gone through the USDA process, we had to establish that we had an interconnection agreement with the city. So we, as your power delivery company, has an interconnection with you. So we were able to satisfy those requirements with our agreements that we had in place. This program is specifically asking for an interconnection agreement or this resolution saying that there is no interconnection agreement needed. So that is the reason for the second interconnection, or the second resolution. So back to the low income, we get to apply, we think that this 20% tax credit will be worth about $5 million to our entire project. And then not all we can use that to spend down on our projects, on all of our projects, and then we get to take a reserve, we get to reserve a specific amount of that to give back to those customers. So,
Okay.
please, questions. I know you have questions.
Is there, I know a lot of times with the LMI stuff, it's based on the community as a whole. Is this different than that, where?
It is different. It's based on that qualifying program that you choose. We just looked at it and thought LIHEAP was the easiest program for cities to administer because you get those lists of customers already and you're already working with them on that. So it's the one thing we need to address is timing. With the new administration that came in, they put an accelerated schedule on this program. So we are trying to get this in place by February 15th. Then we get priority in the queue. If we get in after February 15th, we'll just go into the line of applicants, and then they'll address each application as it comes along. And we won't know those answers until October or so. But if we can get this done by February 15th, then we get priority. I won't say we're rubber stamped in, but if our project is approved and meets all the qualifications, we will stand a much higher chance of getting the credit.
What are the downsides?
The downsides for the city, it will be a step that your staff will have to go through to distribute those funds. I don't think that's too cumbersome. For KPP, we should, and it's organized so that we should do all the work for you to determine what that amount is, and we'll be the ones that will stand all the audits. As far as an audit side, I'm not sure what kind of audit would be on the city, but I would think that it would be pretty negligible, probably just part of your standard annual audit that you go through. So I'm really not seeing any downsides for the city, other than if we don't get it.
Just to make sure I'm understanding, so we would get, if approved, and then when KPP disperses those funds, you would send us the amount of funds that would come to the city, and then our city employees would have a list of the households that qualify to receive those, and then we would apply them as a credit to their bill? Is
Yes.
that- Okay.
Correct. It sounds easy. I hope it is that easy.
Right.
I'm not
Fire
I got no
away.
questions, I'm just
Fire.
sitting here, just
Okay.
fat
Can
and
you,
happy.
can you go back to the interconnection agreement?
sir.
My mind wasn't spinning fast enough apparently to keep up with you there.
Yeah, no
apologize.
problem. It is a little confusing. So when we entered into the USDA process to do the solar facilities, we had to prove that we had an interconnection agreement with the city. And we were able to satisfy the USDA with our current power purchase contracts that we have with you. This program is specifically asking for either one, a fresh interconnection agreement, or this resolution stating that one is not, that we are in agreement that an interconnection agreement is not necessary.
James, do we have that resolution? I don't,
I don't know if did we receive it?
You should have received two resolutions,
Okay.
yes.
When?
Would have been from Leslie maybe Friday, so it might have been pretty
I
okay.
didn't get them.
Okay.
If you want, we can go run copy and bring it back and consider it at the end of the meeting.
well, I mean, my understanding is, at least on one of these, that they're very time sensitive. But I've been flipping through here and I can't find it, and that's why I was looking so puzzled.
Well, I am very sorry, I misunderstood. I have a copy of it here for you,
Okay.
if you would, if that's what you need.
I did not get them from the
Well, we might have messed that up. That says Hillsborough, that says Greensburg. That says Wellington.
Stephen? while
See,
he's
I didn't
doing
get
that,
one either.
Were you planning to be there tomorrow when their people came in? Did
That's
Tim
it,
talk to you
Bill's-
about that?
Well, it is, but it says that's the Greensburg on there. Looky there, there it is.
There it is.
It's under the wrong tab.
I'll go make everybody.
So let's make sure that both are here. I apologize,
You didn't know. and-
yep, there you go. I apologize, I
didn't have one in my printed thing, that's why I kept glancing.
I assumed you had them.
I prefer to believe it's Mark's fault. You didn't hear me, did you?
No, I didn't. I listened to Janet.
No
Even
problem,
better.
no problem
I can't
whatsoever.
remember if I was here Friday or not.
Was there anything else that you wish to, let's talk
you
about
have-
this a little bit. Go ahead.
With the interconnection agreement,
Yes.
so do you have a preference of which way we are looking at going on that? I mean, is it best that we do determine and then clarify that we do have the agreement?
So the simplest thing, of course, is to agree to the resolution that there is not one needed.
Yeah,
Hopefully to put your mind at ease, we've done studies on the interconnection, and we know what we need to do to make sure that there's no harm done to your system with the solar install, and everything looks just fine from an engineering standpoint. We felt like, or through the USDA process, since we have a full requirements contract with the city, that's all taken care of within the current contracts that we have in place. So that was just I guess that's the easy button,
yeah.
if you will.
anyone have any concerns? Or, I mean, I realize when we see it, that'll be a little easier, but just based on the explanation, any thoughts of concerns or reasons why we shouldn't do it?
No, it seems pretty obvious.
Does the interconnection, I don't know. I mean, the interconnection agreement's there for a reason, and by us just saying, no, we don't need one, I don't love that idea, honestly. I mean,
What if something goes wrong? So in the current agreement, is there some, I mean, I'm assuming there's stipulations like if something were to go wrong, or like say, you said that there shouldn't be any damage to our system, but what if there is? I mean, is that addressed in the current connection agreement?
With USDA, with our USDA application? Well, probably not sufficient enough. If I want to be totally honest with you, it's probably not spelled out, you know, if something blows up, KPP's responsible for it. But it's the same interconnection agreements we have that we run 20 megawatt power plants with too. So we have interconnection agreements that are handled through our power purchase contracts with generation, with steam plants, gas turbines, everything. So we felt at the time that that was substantial for our 1 megawatt solar arrays. Not that they're any less important, but they should be a lot simpler than stuff we already do.
Gotcha.
Make sure I understand, I mean, we've already agreed to do the solar program.
Right,
Yeah,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
All right.
This is just one more tax credit that we found to take advantage of. Our first hitch at this was to put some entire projects in, like the city of Wellington was the only low to moderate income community we had. So we applied twice to get that credit and was unsuccessful. This bucket of LMI money seems to fit now, since we've failed on the last two hitches. We're now going with Plan B, and it's this low to moderate income. I think it's Category 3 in the IRS rules. So it stands to reason that we should go for it, especially if we could receive, you know, $5 million to help us pay down, and then you as a community could then pass on some money to your low to moderate income people that apply. So
Where I'm coming from, and I'm not in any way arguing with you guys, the point from my left over here, but they're bringing this to us. It's an opportunity. If it goes through, there are benefits that we can pass on. If for whatever reason it doesn't go through, we're no worse off than we have been. So I'm inclined, if they're saying Marion, Hillsborough, whoever else, here's the resolution you need to adopt, or we think should be adopted, I'm inclined to just say, okay, let the one we'll do. But
I think there's two different resolutions.
there are two different
right?
resolutions.
There's the
yeah.
resolution for the LMI stuff, and there's the resolution for the interconnection agreement.
Yes. Sure.
And the interconnection agreement
So
is required for
it's
the
basically
LMI?
a formality for the LMI tax credit. We've kind of already done an interconnection agreement with the agreement of the USDA loan. So we've kind of gone through that, but not in resolution form. This is more of a resolution form, which the LMI, the IRS wants for this program.
Okay, I'm
So
tracking
that
you
makes
now.
sense then, yeah.
Now
As soon as we can look at them.
I'm sorry, I
No, quit.
failed.
There was an attorney that used to, everything he said, he said, I'm sorry. And every time there was, you know, he had a motion and the other side disagreed, he'd say, I'm sorry. And a judge up in Junction City one time told him that she prohibited him from saying, I'm sorry in her courtroom unless he got to one knee to do it. So,
Thank you.
thanks, Janet.
Well, I guess I'm embarrassed, how's that you didn't have this ahead of time. And I would be glad to step away if you want to carry on and come back if you want some time to look at that as well.
So you're saying that you recommend that we do the resolution that says that we don't need an interconnection agreement, correct?
That is
So then
correct.
that would negate the interconnection agreement that we currently have.
I don't feel like it would, no. That is only for the LMI portion
Gotcha.
of the credit.
Okay.
Yeah, the third whereas for the qualified low income benefit project bonus credit.
Yeah. So Mark, I'm looking at the resolution determining the advisability of establishing the low-income economic benefit program. And section 1, the city administrator is authorized to complete final plans for establishment of a program, and then we would go on into, as James mentioned, I assume the auditing and that sort of thing. Anything there that gives you any instant red flags or
No, I
concerns?
assume it could be like your other grant programs, MIH, or somebody will tell you the rules to follow, and you'll follow it,
Yeah,
would be my guess.
that's why I'm married. I need rules.
And I'm not familiar with the program, and I've never worked with electric utility either.
Let me start with you, Zach. Anything you want to have addressed or question or?
I don't think so, not in that first one, and then my only concern was kind of what Kevin just brought up, is that if we pass the no interconnection agreement required, does it basically wipe out the old one that we have already in place? But if we're confident that it doesn't,
Well, if you say you don't need one, you're not saying you don't have one.
it's true,
I mean, isn't that the position you're taking?
Yes.
it's true.
Kevin, anything?
No, not really. So this is for 5 years?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
For-
Yeah, good catch.
After 5 years, you have to reapply for it, I'm assuming, or you just don't even know if the program will be there in 5
Yeah,
years?
don't even know if it'll be available.
I don't have any problem with it.
Do you care, is there going to be any difference made in which one of these, assuming we approve them both, which one is approved first?
No,
We have to,
I don't think it matters. I don't believe it matters.
well, I'm going to move that we pass the resolution captioned, a resolution of the City of Marion, Kansas, confirming no interconnection agreement is required for the solar facility.
Okay, let's call that 2501.
2501, thank you, Janet. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Seconded by Baxa. Discussion? No discussion, all in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Ayes have it unanimously. This is the third, right?
Yes.
Okay, did you, well, I'll hang on to these and give them to Janet in just a minute then. What are you calling the second one, Janet? What number is it?
2502.
Okay.
I'll move that we pass resolution 2502 to determine establish the low-income economic benefit program through the solar facility.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Burkholder. Discussion? All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Unanimous approval.
Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you, James. Do you want or need copies of these? These are the ones that we,
I'll send them to Leslie tomorrow.
That'd be perfect, that'd be perfect.
so I don't carry them all.
Thank you, very much
Thanks,
appreciate
James.
it.
Thank you.
Thanks, James.
Oh, what time did you say you're gonna be here tomorrow, 4:30?
4:30-ish.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Mark, I know we have John here. Oh, and he's next on the agenda. I'm sorry, I was thinking he was after that. Okay, John, please join us at the hot seat. John Deerdoff, who you've all met before. Welcome, thank you.
Good to be here, Mayor, Council. Appreciate the opportunity to be back. So I think tonight, just a few things for you to kind of finish up. First of all, just look at the profile and make sure we're good with that. And I appreciate all the effort that some of you put in on that. And a lot of times, you know, we end up doing a lot of it, and it doesn't really tell the true story. You guys put a lot of effort into that. I appreciate that. But I want to get that final version. I want to talk about posting date and duration we want to look at, and talk a little bit about posting locations with you. So I don't know, Mayor, if you wanted to start with the profile itself.
Yeah.
And if there's any, I had one question I want to ask about what's in here now still, that anybody have any corrections or additions? I've looked through it again today. I think maybe we got the typos out, but I hope so anyway, so.
Council, you'll recall that we had, we looked at the one from Sterling, I think the first time John came, and then we got a draft of one from Marion that we liked lots of, but we didn't care for some parts of, and we all had the opportunity to send suggested corrections or tweaks. And so I think what we have that was in the packet is what's going to be used unless we tell John there needs to be a change made tonight. So, Tim, what do you think?
I think everything's looking pretty good on it. Some of the pictures are a little distorted, but I'm assuming it's just because of how it comes through on our email, like of the Performing Arts Center at the school. It looks kind of like, the sides of it looks like it's distorted from the light, but I'm assuming that it's a better quality picture than what's appearing on my screen.
Okay. I didn't see, I mean, mine's black and white now, so I can't see it as good as yours, but they look all right to me, but if you're seeing something.
You would notice it from what
Yeah.
it really distorts
I'll take a look
the
at
building
that, yeah.
itself, but it's just because of the quality picture. I'm assuming it's better than what
Probably,
the little
yeah.
picture shows up on my screen. Because the color's not perfect, you know, exactly right in there, so.
Kevin?
I thought it was fine from what I could see.
The only thing I had, and this isn't maybe necessarily directed right at you, John, but I think on the previous one, the compensation was listed as higher, and I guess I am looking for some of your input here, John, on do we feel like that 90 to 110 is gonna get us a good applicant base, or do we need to be higher on that? I mean,
Well, that's a good question, and I think, you all remember seeing that salary survey, and I can pass it around, that we did, just to kind of give you an idea of comparables. And, you know, I was looking at that again today, and we look to be in a pretty good range with that. I really do, if you look at the comparable cities, and I pass this around if you want to review that. But, Hillsborough was probably the one that was a little higher, but the individual there's been there almost 5 years, and so that's pretty normal for something like
Do
that.
you want to take a
yeah,
quick
could you,
look at it?
Yeah,
could you
sure.
pass that around, please?
I'll let you pass that down.
Thank you.
So you're saying that you're comfortable in with that 90 to
I
to
do,
the
I think,
110 range?
when we first started talking, the mayor and I and Mark and just through us, that, that over 100 seemed like to be a pretty good spot. Looking at some of those survey cities there, I think, if I recall, we just went through the Sterling was at 95, I think, something like that. So very close, yeah. So I think it's a pretty competitive range for the size community, I really do.
Get 5 years or that.
Hillsboro's the real outlier on that.
Yeah, it is. The rest of them are all pretty much right there. And it doesn't surprise me because, Matt's been there almost 5 years, and that's pretty normal, yeah.
If,
that bad. I think it'd be a
if
place
the, and maybe you don't have enough data to be able to know the answer to this question, but if you increase the range, do we change the type of candidate that we'll get, do you think?
Maybe a slightly, but not a great deal, because I think you're still gonna look at, I mean, younger professionals into the profession, maybe coming into the profession, user experience. You might attract some longtime managers that are looking to get out of where they're at, and, sometimes that's problematic. What are we moving from?
Right.
It wouldn't hurt to raise it, I'm gonna tell you that, but I do think you're in a pretty good, we had, 110, a pretty good range.
My only concern, I guess, is just, right, looking at those cities, obviously, this range falls pretty much right in the middle of those. We're in a different, I believe that we are in a different situation than all of those towns are, in terms of.
Well, and, if you wanna enhance it, it certainly would make a difference, I
I
think.
just wanna make sure that we're
Yeah,
getting a good applicant pool.
If you get a good app, you can always negotiate. If a guy wants more money, he'll tell you.
What-
Then you bring it.
Are you concerned that somebody will look at this and say, oh, 90?
I'm not going
That's an
there
awful,
I'm not
that's a
going
low
there.
floor.
I'm
I
not
mean,
going
a
there
hu-
for that salary.
Yeah.
That they wouldn't even apply, not that we couldn't negotiate with them higher, but that they wouldn't even apply. That's more my concern.
Because there is and I've been through this enough where, particularly candidates that, like in this case, if this were it, they want to make 125, I'm gonna go ahead and apply, and I'm gonna get interviewed, and then it gets ugly at that, or it just gets complicated, because, the range was here.
Right.
And typically, don't want to go over that range, but you could in certain situations if you found the right person, but, the 90, that, the 100 number seemed to be kind of what we were looking at. It wouldn't hurt to bump that, but that's just how comfortable you as a council are with that.
You're welcome to move it back to that number if you want. That's,
Yeah.
Which this is just a flyer, it's not like
it's
this
just
is
the flyers,
the
how we looked at it.
official decision of what,
Well, but it's what's gonna go out for
Yeah,
the advertising, right, for the
Yeah.
advertisement to get people to apply, this is what they're gonna see is
and it would
90
make
to
a difference.
110, and it's great that we have all this information about our community in there, but at the end of the day, if they're a city administrator or looking to get into city administrator, the compensation is the first thing they're gonna look at.
So would you like it better if it were 90 to 120, or 100 to 120, or 100 to 110?
I think that my position would be to go to 100. I think that 100 number, just that difference of $10,000, I think it changes the feel of it, or that's me.
But you're okay with the 110?
I would go to 100 to 120.
Okay, that was my question.
Yeah.
What do you guys think?
I get your point,
Yeah.
but, I don't know that it affected me that much.
I'm not gonna lose sleep over it if we don't do it. It was just something, I feel like we're in a different position than a lot of other towns around right now. And to get a good applicant, my concern is that we need to have a higher salary to get somebody to come here. That might not be true.
I wouldn't really be opposed to seeing that top number raised a little bit, but me personally, I kinda like kind of the floor at 90, if you have somebody, without much experience and stuff coming in.
Sure.
You hate to,
I don't think the bottom number.
like you said, it's all negotiable at the end of the day anyway, when it's all said and done, but I would kinda like to leave that floor down there maybe a little bit in case you have somebody with, it's all based on experience
Yeah.
stuff anyway, but.
That's kind of where
This is mine.
Yeah.
my go is, I'd rather keep the floor where it is, but we could bump the ceiling a little bit, which shows that we're flexible. If you can come in and wow us, maybe you can.
Sure.
Could you live with that?
Yeah.
So,
So you think the 90 to
120?
120?
Mark?
That's fine, or you could always put in there negotiable for, I look at it, you're gonna negotiate with somebody anyway.
Sure.
Yeah. That'll open some eyes though, I think, looking at that. And if I'm, 5 years experience somewhere and, I'm making, 92,000, I'm gonna look at this probably, so, yeah.
Anything else?
Nope.
from us. So you said had
I-
one thing you wanted to,
Yeah, one thing on page, I think it's the third page back under community development. And I know we had that, it says the economic development director will be hired after the first of the year. And is that still accurate? Is that kind of, and is that through a private corporation setup?
No.
Or
no, it's a city employee.
city employee? Okay, okay.
I would think we could almost change that to say the economic development director will be hired after I don't know the wording of it, basically after the city administrator.
Okay.
I don't know what anybody else thinks, but.
Let me, just for the sake of discussion, if for whatever reason, this grinds to some kind of a halt and we can't find anyone in a timely fashion, I guess I would say I might pivot and say, well, I want to get going on city economic development director, although I do think my preference would be city administrator, economic development director. If I'm gonna go to a sporting comparison, I'd say general manager, coach.
Right.
But
Yeah, and I think applicants would see that as a positive, knowing that that's something that they're gonna be a part of and, you know, find that right fit, to know that that's not done yet, but things could change, but, you know, I think we had it in there because somebody suggested that be in there, and I just wanna make sure, because it says after the first of the year, well, we're after the first of the year, so maybe clarify that.
let me throw this out, and gentlemen, please react. What if we change that the economic development director will be hired, I had it and I just lost it, after new city administrator takes office?
Yeah.
Okay,
Is that okay with everyone?
okay. That was the only other, the other thing I guess we need to talk about is posting. And today's February the 3rd, 4th. And once we get this, we're ready to start posting. And I did want to talk about the duration. Say we've got it done by the end of this week, just say February 10th. And then maybe accepting resumes until March the 14th, which is 4 to 5 weeks, just a little over 4 weeks. Is that, I mean, that's typical what we look at is about a month, 4 weeks, maybe 5 weeks.
By then, you'll know whether there's interest or whether we
Yeah.
need to take another look at what we're doing.
Take a deep breath and, you know, reevaluate it and reopen it.
Yeah.
And I did want to share, Mark, if I could have you pass these out, kind of and I don't know if you've seen these, but these are the posting sites that we typically will post it. And I want you to look at that and then make sure there isn't, you know, some specific area that any of you might have that you would want to see it. But as I go down that list, it's kind of the traditional, I'll just kind of run through that real quick. You know, ICMA, which is the International City Managers, County Managers Association, which is the national outlet. City Code, which is Ranson Financial, they put out a job board. KMU, you guys are familiar with Kansas Municipal Utilities. And KU, Greener Grasses, that's through the KU Public Administration Program, which is a big city management. They've had a few weak candidates that have come through that program, like Mark, but other than that,
I thought, did he say weak? He did say weak.
no, anyway, it's a well thought of program, so a lot of activity there. KECM, of course, the Kansas Association of City Managers, the league, and then we typically go through, or we have through the Missouri, Nebraska, Oklahoma, Iowa leagues, and those are basically where the city management organizations advertise through their leagues. That's why it's through the league. And then LinkedIn, and I usually just post something on LinkedIn into my account. But so those are kind of what we're looking at. If there's, you know, one city wanted us to look at Arkansas, I looked at that, and they don't really have a place to post it there that I could find anyway. So, but if there's some other areas you guys are thinking about that we're missing.
Does Wichita State have anything?
No, Mark and I just talked about that, and they used to have, well, that's where I graduated from. Back in the day, it was more of a city manager guided program. and now it's evolved, and it really doesn't resemble that much at all anymore. They've got the Public Policy Management Center there, but, so really nothing there specifically that would go to public administration or city manager, so.
And then the only other one, I mean, you kind of hit on Arkansas, we've touched all the other border states. Does
Yeah.
Colorado have
Colorado,
anything, or-
we've done that a lot. Colorado's a pretty good one, and we can certainly add that. And, you know, some of these, the league has discounts. They have an arrangement with these states where it's discounted, so it's not a lot of money at most of these places. I think the most expensive one on here is ICMA, and that's like $500 or $600, so that's a pricey one, but it's a good one, so. So Colorado, we can add that pretty simple, and it's kind of the bordering states is what we looked at, yeah.
For me, and I don't want to make this sound in any way insulting, but I don't have the expertise to know where to go with this. I could figure out LinkedIn. I could
Yeah.
figure that part
Yeah.
out. But beyond that, I just have assumed that you and Mark would have a pretty good idea of where people, we've talked about our target people, which would be, well, I mean, you don't want to overstate this, but in my mind, we're likely to get someone that's younger in the profession, who's wanting to move up in the profession, wants to build a resume. Maybe you got somebody who had some kind of revelation and wants to live in small town America. That'd be great. But assuming it's the other, is this where we would go? Is this where those people would look for job opportunities?
Yeah, it's, you know, in every state, like in Missouri, I mean, there's young up-and-comers in Missouri that are looking, and so, not to go too far, and, so, yeah. These are, I mean, we've had pretty good success with these. I can't, you know, there's not too many others out there that, you know, in this day and age, you put it in one place and it's pretty easy to find, you know, so. And of course, we'll have links to, you know, to the profile and some of the ads that we place in some, because some of these places are, obviously you can't put this whole thing in their, on their website. I can link it, you know, with an ad and just link it, so, yeah.
Kevin, Tim?
Okay.
So if we want to add Colorado and
Okay,
go with this?
do that.
I'm fine with that,
Sing
yeah.
up to me.
So I think, posting duration, are you comfortable again with the 4 to 5 week time frame? And typically what I would do is we got down to that last week, and if I felt like, man, you know, I would communicate with Mark and the mayor that, yeah, boy, we may want to look at, you know, throwing this back out a little bit further. And sometimes that really is helpful, because somebody will say, yeah, I looked at that, and then I missed it, and then I saw it up again, and so I become interested. I hope that doesn't happen, but we've done it before. So.
Did you say February 10 to March 17, or what did you say?
March the 14th.
14th.
Is, I don't look at the calendar, I don't know what day of the week that is. Is that a Monday, I believe, maybe? But it's a Friday? Yeah, it's a Friday,
Friday.
yeah. And that's kind of how we, yeah. And we may, I'll talk with Nick, and we may flip that to that Monday just to give people another weekend, so a few more days, yeah.
Speaking only for myself, I think that's a reasonable length of time.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to say, hey, we're going to keep it open for 90 days.
No, yeah. Yeah, you would lose, there's a lot of interest in that. 90 days is a long time for some of these
Yeah.
individuals looking, but,
So,
and, yeah.
anyone have a different date you want on either side of that?
Good to me.
Okay?
And I think that is really all I had. Posting locations, posting date, duration, approve the final version with the one change there on the economic development individual. And I think we're good.
I appreciate your, I was the one that was really wanting to make sure that we got, not that the pictures you used in the draft were fine, I thought there were better ones, and so I
Well,
appreciate your working with us.
And it's so important, because a lot of times we're just kind of left to do it, and so Nikki, she's finding pictures online and things, and I mean, there was a lot of verbiage that was added. I think Mary sent that from the medical, the hospital, you know, the library individual that
Right.
wrote something up, and that is very helpful, because those individuals, you know the community better than we do, and so that was really some very helpful input.
Well, Are you done?
Okay, I am done. I am gonna get to work. I'll get this to change to Nikki tomorrow, and we're gonna start posting this week. And then what I'll plan to do is update Mark, just probably on kind of a weekly basis, say, hey, you know, we've got activity, here's what it is, and if the numbers are low at first, don't panic, because sometimes that happens, and they tend to jump at the end, but, we'll keep you posted on that. And if any of you individually have somebody, for whatever reason, that contacts you, feel free to give them, you know, my name, my phone number, whatever. I'd be happy to talk to anybody in more detail about the process. And the other thing I just want to emphasize as we go through this, I think I mentioned this last time, you know, we'll collect all the resumes. And basically, when we're done, we'll go through our review process, and then we'll present you a book with all the resumes, all the applicants, all their resumes, and then our rating is the top 5 or 6 that we think. And you may not agree with that, and that's why I like you to see them all. So you may find something in one that we're not rating high that we don't know about. So then once you've had a chance, you know, 3 or 4 or 5 days to look through that, then we would come and sit down in executive session, hopefully, and talk about candidates and kind of the next steps from there. So, and throughout this process, the confidentiality of applicants is really, really important, so.
Is there a rule of thumb? I think you're gonna tell me that, well, if you have 8 great candidates, it's gonna be different than if you have 2 great candidates. But is it rule of thumb, you'd probably get an interview 3 versus 5 or something like that?
5 at the most, normally. You know, sometimes you get into that, but my experience has been that it's usually the cream rises to the top, and it's 3 to 5 if you're really fortunate. And sometimes there's a person interviewed that, you know, you kind of know going in the interview them, and you get what you saw there. Is it one that you were interested in? So, but I've always felt like if I had 2 really good ones and, you know, a couple questionable, but, you know, you're the judge, at least you've got some choices. Because sometimes people surprise you, you know, in the interview. They really kind of wake up and they really can change your mind on, you know, what's on paper. So,
Right.
But it's an important hire, and we don't want to rush it. And if we get through it all and interviews, and we'll talk more about the interview process. If, you know, say if we've got 6 that you're interested in, we might talk about, you might want to do a Zoom interview with them, just a quick intro, just to kind of get a better feel before you bring, and maybe only bring 3 to the community, or, you know, but we'll talk about that as we go, so.
Thank you very much.
You bet.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Do you want this back?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, that
This
was
is your copy.
You should have that if you want it.
Yeah, I have it, and if anybody.
If you want that, I can leave that for whoever.
That's fine.
Okay.
I think you're good.
And Mark, is your resume ready, or are you?
I'm getting older by the minute.
I don't think he'd make the cut, so. Kidding.
We said young and up and coming.
I'm either one of those.
Okay, thank you, guys.
Thanks, John.
Appreciate it. Mark,
John.
thanks. Have a good one.
Mark, should we skip Greg?
Well, that'd be fine. I'll email him, let him know we're.
Okay, well, I mean, but Casey's gonna have
You
to
ready to go,
drive
Casey?
home.
Yeah, Casey has to drive home. Go ahead. Casey, I think I mentioned last time, when I was an employee, we had a really good team of people around us, and Casey's fantastic. He's been the Employee Main Street Director, either on the board or the director 20, 25 years.
15.
15. It's just.
I've been with the
Maybe I was
organization
there that
25
long.
years. Yeah.
But Employee's taking advantage of a lot of little different programs. I just asked Casey to come over and kind of tell you about, these are things to think about in the future.
Thanks. If you want to keep him, I would just suggest a fountain drink machine for Diet Pepsi just in the office.
One of my habits.
Well, thanks for having me. As Mark said, I've been associated with Emporia Main Street for about 25 years and the director for 15. Emporia is not a particularly wealthy community, so we have to take advantage of all the different resources that we have at our disposal. The Main Street philosophy grew out of 2 huge federal mistakes One was called Urban Renewal, where they decided to take towns and create walking mall variants of those different communities, and that did not work at all. And then they turned right back around and said that we should create a different version of the federal government, said we should create a different version of economic development that is just reverting buildings back to what they were in the 1700s or 1800s, and that was also an unmitigated disaster. So they brought together some of the leading minds in economic development and placemaking, design, promotions, and came up with a Main Street philosophy. So that 4-point approach of economic vitality and promotion, design, and organization was kind of the foundation of the Main Street movement. And with that, we've been an organization that acquires resources for catalyst sort of development. So Mark was on the founding committee for Emporia Main Street. We have done about $165 million worth of redevelopment activities since the formation of the organization 34 years ago. 40 of that was prior to my coming on board, so the remainder of that has been over the last 15 years. And some of those different incentive packages are kind of built into our planning mechanisms. So historic tax credits, for example. We've got a historic district in downtown Emporia where we can get 30% of the expenditures that go into having a building back in the form of state tax credits and 20% in federal tax credits. We can sell or syndicate the state tax credits. We can use the federal tax credits to offset federal tax liability.
Marion being smaller, it's even higher.
Yeah, yours would be, instead of 30%, 40%. And there's currently a bill at the federal level that would take all federal historic tax credits for rural communities and bump that from 20% to 40%.
And I might mention, Casey introduced probably, what, 14 years ago?
Yeah.
The historical district to Emporia. A lot of confusion at first, but at the end of the day, none of the projects would have been done without it. Because as he suggested, if you had $1 million project, you come up with 400,000 or 500,000 of it, that's a lot of equity into a project immediately.
Yeah, for smaller communities, we found that the price of lumber was the same wherever, and the price of labor was essentially the same in different places, but the rent rates that you could get varied wildly. If I'm in Kansas City, I'm getting a much higher rent rate than I'm getting in Emporia, Kansas. So to make the dollars work, we had to find alternative financing. And so historic tax credits would be one variant there through the Office of Rural Prosperity. There are HEAL grants and emergency HEAL grants. We've been successful in applying for those. There are grant programs like rooms for upper story redevelopment. We utilize an upper story rural housing incentive district in Emporia that's been successful in taking buildings and making sure that we were utilizing every square foot to produce some sort of profit. And that we think is critical. For our downtown in particular, we have some of those upper story apartments that will serve as Airbnbs. Some of them serve as opportunities for people that are moving to the community. For the first time, they may want to build a house, but they need a place to stay for several months. It's great for young teachers. It's great for people that work at our hospital or work for city, county government. And we found that if people live in a downtown area, they spend about 40% of their disposable income in the businesses within that immediate downtown area, which meant that our businesses that were open till 5 o'clock suddenly had to be open later, and they had to offer different products and services. So it made our businesses more sustainable. We also look federally as part of the Main Street program at different opportunities that are brought to us. One major program that I think Mark was aware of, and we talked through it a bit, was Hope 6. It's a HUD program, and we were able to apply for a $500,000 grant to revitalize an upper story within a building, convert that to housing, and add some mixed use in both the first floor and basement. It's one of those different programs that is, the association with Main Street gave us access to what those applications look like, best practices, some things that we need to look at that were potential pitfalls. And we were one of 3 awardees throughout the U.S. and Puerto Rico that successfully applied for that particular grant. We'll utilize USDA. It was great to hear that you're also tapping into USDA, but REAP programs and RDBG programs and other loan guarantee programs are up there for the types of incentives that we'll look at for businesses that are in startup or expansion mode. We're a affiliate of Network Kansas, so my organization also acts as the Lyon County e-community. Last year, with our Network Kansas affiliation and then some of our own loan programs, Incident Without Walls through the Kansas Department of Commerce and Kansas Main Street, the Trustler Loan Program, which we raised ourselves, and the Grow Kansas program, which is associated with Network Kansas. We authorized about $690,000 worth of loans that were 0 or low interest for a variety of different business types that were in startup or expansion mode. And all of those were leveraged with traditional bank financing. So sometimes our banks want to say yes to loans, but they have a hard time taking on all of the risk. So they need a partner to step in a secondary or tertiary mode to offset some of that different risk.
Casey, I might point out on the 2 loan funds he mentioned, one with Trustler, you just had new when a guy packed away, left it in his will, the Turnbull. Mike owned Robert Blue for a long time, and Mike was on the Trustler Foundation.
Mm-hmm.
And those were just private money. People bought into the concept, and they had just, as you said, what was it, started with 25,000, you've loaned over 600,000.
Right.
Just local people took an interest.
Robert's Blue is a funeral home.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mark assumed everyone's from Emporia.
Yeah, Mike packed away, what, 3 or 4 years ago?
Yeah, and Mike left to trust. We just were able to leverage part of that for a $10,000 facade grant, and we received 14 applications for that. And the way we structure the grant is to absorb information that we can use then to pursue other grant opportunities. So even if they don't get that $10,000 facade grant, I've got all of your data. We're ready to go when the state has a different sort of grant program, or there are LISC programs that do kind of the same thing that we were looking at for a facade grant. So we're collecting information on behalf of those different businesses. We're interviewing basically those different businesses about expansion opportunities or startup opportunities, and we're teaching classes. I teach a Start Your Own Business class and have for 18 years now, and a e-tech startups class, which is more product and technology based. And we use that information to determine the types of incentives that we need to put in front of our different entrepreneurs. But all of that is part of the Main Street philosophy. We believe that communities succeed when you've got local ownership. Those dollars stay locally. Mark talked about the Turnbull programs. Mike was a local guy. He kept his dollars locally, and we are able to use those dollars now to build up local businesses. We also believe in asset-based economic development, so looking at your unique assets and trying to determine how you can take those assets and build on them to create economic opportunities. Emporia is the founding city of Veterans Day. We have a Veterans Banner program that now is in 44 different states, and a lot of those are built out in Emporia, Kansas by one of our local businesses that we helped through that process. We, of course, have the Flint Hills. We helped folks when it was back called the Dirty Kansas to start up that race when it was 125 people and some outfield fencing with a few beers, and now it's 5,000 riders from about 44 different nations and all 50 states. We'll look at folks that have great ideas for businesses, and we'll utilize a fabrication lab that builds out prototyping or small batch manufacturing. We'll take vacant areas in our building, and we'll incubate businesses with 6 months of free rent, 6 months of reduced market rate rent, 6 months of time to find a permanent home rent, and get them into a permanent spot where they can thrive, but they're coached on a weekly basis with opportunities to grow and develop and get to know some of the different loan programs that we've talked about. One of the things that I usually coach smaller communities on is the concept of regionalism. There is a group called the Kansas Infrastructure Hub. If you're not connected with them, I brought some information today that you should look at. We're finding that when the federal agencies look at Kansas, they think that 105 counties is a little ridiculous. A lot of those being counties with very small population ranges from what they're used to. So they want different counties or different areas to cooperate, to receive funding for highway projects or water projects or infrastructure projects of a variety of different types. So the Infrastructure Hub is one of those different groups that we utilize to look at broader areas that we can cooperate and bring additional dollars in to facilitate what those different businesses need. Nobody wants to go into an area where they see a beautiful building, but they're told, oh, the water doesn't work. It's always going to flood. There's no fiber to that area. You're going to have to put in a bunch of your own money to make this a salvageable sort of project. We'll also look at the different things that we want to accomplish in the community and try and kill two birds with one stone if we can. So if we've got a park that we want to build out, how does that coordinate with existing businesses? If we want to build up an event, how do we make sure that people are staying overnight and building up transient guest taxes? If we're trying to build a business, how do we coach them to become a destination so that they're bringing people from outside the market trade area and bringing more dollars in that flow through all of our different community partners and additional businesses? We have something that we call the Rule of 4, which means for every hour somebody spends in the car, they want 4 hours of stuff to do once they get to an area. So we have to build nodes within our community to make sure that we're exercising that Rule of 4, drawing more people into the area. And then from a Main Street perspective, we're all about density, because we understand at the end of the day that all infrastructure is a liability. If you build out a road, it's not set it and forget it. You've got to maintain that road. Same with storm sewers, same with water infrastructure. So the denser we can make a community and the higher value we can make those different buildings within the community by adding those density elements, upper story rehab, utilizing basements for climate controlled storage, different multifunctional uses on first floors that can add more of an educational element, retail element, production element, all in the same space, then we have a stronger tax base, because those higher value buildings and less infrastructure that we have to consistently invest in means that we can invest dollars into other areas. So we'll constantly look at things like raise grants for street infrastructure or streetscapes in general, or CIP planning for the community and how we can use that planning to solve different problems at maybe a lower price point. You know, Mark was part of one of those different processes in downtown Emporia where we had a storm water issue through an area, but we also found out that we had an opportunity to build a large mixed-use development. That mixed-use development needed additional parking. Instead of spending $1.8 million on a storm sewer line, we created a parking lot behind the building that was 6 inches deeper than we had originally planned it to act as retention. Everybody got what they wanted, and we spent a fraction of what we would have on the stormwater line. So I think from a Main Street perspective, we'll constantly look at what's going on in the community, market trends, how we need to train entrepreneurs, but then we'll look at partnering agencies at some of the different incentives that are available, those things that act as catalysts, so they're going to have an expanded impact year after year, or they're going to emphasize the ability for more entrepreneurs to jump into the market. And not all of those have to be terribly expensive. One of the incentives that we use that, I'll invite anybody that wants to attend at the end of March 27th, we will have the 4th annual Show of Hands. And we'll have that at the location of one of our first Show of Hands presentations. Basically, it's a pitch event. So people pitch their concept with a PowerPoint, and they'll have a table set up that showcases what they're trying to accomplish. There's a Q&A portion, and people will attend the event and they'll buy tickets. And those tickets represent real dollars that they vote for their favorite concept. We'll also reach out to local banks with their Community Reinvestment Act needs, and those banks will donate dollars. We'll have advertisers donate dollars, a variety of other community members that donate dollars that are distributed by a judging panel. But all of those dollars are held until the business is actually starting up or expanding. So they have to give us their invoices, and then we reimburse those. So it's not a public speaking competition. We've seen those in colleges where somebody does a great job and then takes that prize money and heads to Cancun, and that's not what we're trying to do. Within this particular program, 88% of the participants have gone on to start up or expand businesses. And those that haven't, we've retained all the dollars, so we roll those over into the next class. But those, we're not talking about a lot of money. It's about $15,000 overall, and the people that they participate with in those sorts of activities become their advocates, and they gain additional resources by just making things available to the community. So some of the things that we deal with, and I'll give Mark the Kansas Infrastructure Hub, I've already emailed you that, but I'll make sure you have a copy of that, are things that we can work with collaboratively within the broader region. Some of those different programs or projects are things that we coach our neighbors on, and we'll, if we see something that you're doing that's fantastic, we'll ask questions about that too. I grew up on a cattle ranch in between Lebo and New Straw in Kansas, and believe in small towns and that they should take advantage of every sort of opportunity that's available. Tonight, I just wanted to make sure that you had access to some of these infrastructure hub pieces of information. You understood a little bit about the Main Street program, what we do, and some of the vernacular that we use for catalyst sort of economic development, and then make myself available for any questions that you have about specific programs or ways that the Main Street program can help with our 4-point approach to economic development and entrepreneurial catalyst development within your community.
And I might say, Casey, that's 34 years since Main Street became, or 4 years of Main Street City. They started with nothing. So you just kind of start somewhere,
Yep.
and eventually evolves on itself. But
And you're in a much better position than we were when we started.
Yeah.
There was a 40% vacancy rate in downtown Emporia when the Main Street program started. It was started out of desperation. The people that we talked to from that era said on Friday night after 5, you could fire a cannon down Commercial Street and not have to worry about hitting anything. So,
so my thought was that Casey probably the best in the state, and on the same he's talking about. Just surround ourselves with people who know what's going on, and just do one at a time. In 5-10 years, you've made a lot of progress. Again, the historical district, when that came, no other project, I think I could say, would have happened without it.
no, like I
All
said.
of our guys who put the lofts in took advantage of it.
Yeah. $40 million when I started post historic district, that's where that additional 125 came from. And we had a lot of people that were investing within their buildings. Upper story housing really wasn't a thing prior to that. And we've seen all sorts of alternative uses within the downtown area.
And I think Ben Moore said, I think he's done 4 buildings at Council Grove. So it helps. It's a part of the
finance and making sure.
The Rural Housing Incentive District, that was, we were the first in the state to do that, and that's been really important. You know, that the housing crisis is a utilization crisis. We have vacancies in buildings that are used for storage or buildings that are used for Airbnbs or upper stories that aren't being utilized. But if we can find the incentives and apply them correctly, we can create housing, create density. The upper story housing that we're talking about, we didn't have to build a single street. We didn't have to build any water. We didn't have to build any sewer. It's just there. And something that was valued at $0 now has a property value. But those people that are there, we're in a weird sort of portion of the state where we spend 36% more than the national average on fuel because we drive everywhere. But we've got people that will walk everywhere they need to go, and they're not keeping the money. They're spending that at local businesses, extending their hours and extending profitability, and we think that's important.
So last meeting, I talked about the guy in Emporia that wowed me. Well, this is the guy. Mark has been, slowly, I'm starting to understand where his plan, but we've met Robert Swanson. He came a few months ago. This is Casey Woods, Ben Moore, we're already in business with, Mr. Varenberg?
Greg will be next.
Okay,
Yeah.
but I think this would be his legion of superheroes.
Yeah.
And the only thing I disagree with, I think Mark sees himself as Batman. But that his plan, as I understand it, is that we will be, we have experts to reach out to when the new person's on board.
Yeah. And I can vouch for them, they're very good at what they do.
Yeah. But I don't know about you, but I mean, it's just exciting when you hear him talk.
He can wow you.
That's some good
Yeah.
ideas.
Did you say that the federal federal tax credit, there's a bill to take that up to 40%?
Yes, for rural communities.
So we could be looking at 80% in Marion that you could get back
Yes.
Tax credit.
in tax credits, yes.
Yep. Yeah, and there are some ways that you can utilize those with partnerships. People that want to invest in communities, there are opportunity zones, which I haven't checked out. If you have an OZ here and how to combine those. We have industrial revenue bonds that we've used to great effect in the downtown area. Part of my job is to look at projects and layer financing and talk through what we can do to make projects happen. So we talked about the 27th. That event will be held in Radius Production, which is the Radius Brewery that's in downtown Emporia. That was the first use of the Invest Kansas exemption, which is a type of crowdfunding in the state of Kansas. And the Radius Production facility used a variety of different types of financing to take a massive former dry cleaning facility, utilizing KDHE and a variety of historic tax credits and other types of financing to convert that to a production facility. So we've started something from some guys with some talent, about 15 cents, with crowdfunding and some different loan programs, and now they're ready to open up their larger production facility that we can highlight, show of hands at, and showcase one of that first class of different businesses, talk through how they utilize those incentives, and then you can see the proof is kind of in the concept that's all around you. But it's great to do those different tours, and if you ever want to tour any of those different facilities, if you ever want to come over to Emporia and talk more extensively about some of those different programs and how they're applied, we're available to host.
Really appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you
Really
very much.
appreciate that. We hopefully we'll be able to take advantage of you again in the future. But I asked you when we were there, I mean, obviously we need to be able to give back in some form or other, and hopefully if there's ever some way that we can partner or whatever that gives you any help, we will.
Well, since you have that hat up, just guarantee me a Chiefs win this Sunday, and we'll call that good.
Well,
I have to go to Philadelphia later on in the year for a National Main Street Conference, and I really want to be able to wear a jersey and not get heckled, so.
I'm not, you're going to Philadelphia. I didn't get it. They booed Santa Claus.
Thank you, Casey.
Thanks, Casey.
Thanks, Casey, very much.
And the next is Greg Barnberg. Kansas Rural Water Association came out with a new financing program, brand new. Elmer sent a deal out to all the general manager, to all the members, and then I had worked with Greg as our finance guy, he's sold bonds in Emporia for 30 years. And he just happened to be associated at Raymond James. So Greg couldn't make it tonight, but we have his number, we can call him and he'll review the program with you. And what it does, if you want, you can borrow against this, you borrow AA minus rates. You're just part of a better credit risk. And you can do it anytime, you can do it 1 year, up to 30 years, I think he said, but he'll go through the details.
Do you want, I got my phone, do you want me to come over and you can punch his number in?
Well, I laid it in front of you. Right? I had it laying there, do you see it?
You
I
have
can
it?
tell you what it is,
Well, I don't want to say it in an open meeting,
so.
because Burkholder's been known to,
I got,
Take on too many bonds.
here, I can just give you my phone for a second.
okay? Or Mark, we could, if we just laid that
Okay,
microphone,
let's see if it works.
I think you should need to lay that mic down and
Okay.
point it at it.
Say that again. Hi, Greg, Mark.
Hi, Mark.
Okay, I'm not sure I know what you mean. Oh. Go ahead. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Greg?
Yes.
There you go. All right, I just kind of briefly explained the new program, and if you kind of go through the details and the advantages that it might offer to a town like Marion or towns like Marion.
Sure. I appreciate the chance to join the meeting this evening, and sorry I couldn't be there in person, but Mark may have shared a little bit of background about myself. I'm in the Public Finance Department of Raymond James and have been working on bond issues in Kansas for about 36 years now. Worked with a lot of cities, Emporia, Hillsborough, Wamego, Kingman, Mulvane, but then also get involved in the bond issues for the Kansas Power Pool, or KPP Energy, and I know the city is a member of KPP. But one of the, when we work with cities or any governmental issuer on financing a project, we start looking at what are the available financing tools for that project. And in Kansas, we typically would look towards general obligation bonds or temporary notes as a financing tool. Public Building Commission revenue bonds are another financing tool. But several years ago, Raymond James started out nationally creating a program through the Rural Water Financing Agency that is a fairly broad financing program. And you can be misled by the name. Rural water makes you think that it's really intended for water projects only. But it can finance any project that the city would consider as long as the city has a water utility system. And what makes the program unique is that rather than issuing your own bonds and going out and securing a bond rating, and oftentimes that bond rating may fall in, say, the A category, single A rated, the Rural Water Financing Agency program has a program rating of AA minus from S&P. And so it's a higher rating than a lot of cities or water districts may be able to get on their own. And anytime we're selling a bond issue to investors, the higher the bond rating, it creates a comfort level or a degree of creditworthiness that allows those investors to accept slightly lower interest rates. So we were really excited when this program had multi-state authority, and we've partnered now with the Kansas Rural Water Association to promote this program throughout Kansas to finance a wide variety of projects. The process that you go through for the Rural Water Financing Agency program is really very similar to what you would go through if you were issuing bonds on your own. you first would adopt a project resolution that gives you authority to finance that project. And then we would work to create the proposed repayment schedules. And once you decide on the amount you want to finance and how that would be structured and what the repayment period might look like, then you're part of a pooled borrowing program where your financing is sold to investors alongside other participants in the rural water financing program. And the benefit there is that rather than pay all of the cost of issuance directly yourself, you're sharing those with other participants in the pool. So it helps get a slightly better interest rate and also some efficiencies on the financing costs that you would pay for a bond issue. But to put it in comparison, if you were looking at a general obligation bond issue today of say, 15 years, you would have probably an average interest rate of 4.15% or 4.2%. The Rural Water Financing Agency program has a 15-year rate currently of about 4.03%. So you can see a little better interest rate on the program. But then also you're sharing some of those cost of issuance, so you're not paying 100% of the legal fees and 100% of the rating cost. And that's where you see some additional benefits of this program, is it can reduce your borrowing costs and put you in a position where you might get a slightly better interest rate. But we're really excited to start unveiling the program to some water districts and cities throughout Kansas. And I appreciate Mark putting me on your schedule today to share a little bit of information about the program. But happy to answer any questions you might have, or I can also talk in more detail about just financing options that we see cities using, for a variety of just general improvement projects, if that would be helpful.
So, Mark, you asked Greg to be to speak with us. Can you, in your mind, what would be an example of what we might want to?
Well, just on the outside looking in on your street reconstruction, you do 1 block a year. What you could do, and what I imagine some other towns would do, you could do 5 blocks and pay it off over a couple budget cycles. You probably, at the end of the day, probably come out ahead. I think, well, Zach might know, but I think the rule of thumb is cost of construction goes up 4% a year. That's kind of what we always use. And that's what, is that a good number, Greg, what you're saying?
Yeah, I would agree with that.
And so if you pay 4%, at the end of the day, you might come out ahead. You might get better bids because you're doing more quantity. That's just one example.
Okay.
And I know other towns might do it, in the area might do $1 million road project and pay it off over 7-8 years. And I think the theory is you get more bidders and more quantity discounts with the larger project. That's just one example. And again, you have to follow all the laws and all that. You have legal counsel that Greg works with and walk you through anything you do. Tonight was just to tell you about the new program.
Right. It's kind of exciting in that we have, I've seen cities our size, I know of cities our size with a lot worse roads than we have. But we obviously have areas that need work. And roads aren't the only thing we need to look at, but certainly it's an important one. And I appreciate that previous council was designated a specific number of blocks and the amount of money to get that number of blocks. But as you work on these blocks and 12 others go into disrepair, it's a tough fight.
Yeah. And I might, summarize, I might mention, every city is unique. We gave a talk one time at a city manager meeting. What Lawrence does will be different than what Emporia does. If you're in Leawood, they're probably not going to do any incentives of any type. It just depends on where you're at and what you're trying to accomplish. So Derby's different than, I think the lady I did it with city manager Derby at the time. Derby's pretty different than Emporia. Emporia different than Lawrence. Lawrence is different than Manhattan. Every governing body and the people in that town know what's right for them. So these are just a bunch of, it's kind of like a cafeteria. You have programs, some will apply to you, some won't.
I don't have any questions, other than I appreciate, Greg, you're taking the time to make contact with us, and I'm hopeful we'll be able to talk with you more and maybe do some kind of a project in the near future.
Yeah, well, likewise, I appreciate your time this evening, and we're happy to help you explore what financing analyses might look like or debt service schedules. So if we can help you think through this, please let me know. We'd be glad to do that.
Appreciate your time.
Thank you, Greg.
Yeah,
Thank you all. Have a nice evening.
thank you.
You're really pushing on information overload on Mikey.
I'm already tired.
No, I'm not talking about being tired, I'm talking about a lot of info you're
Well,
coming at.
that's why I said I don't want you to be overwhelmed. One program may help you. I just wanna make sure you know they're out there, and, you know, long after I'm gone, I wanna make sure you have a team of people around you that was really beneficial during my work career in Emporia.
Yeah, and I appreciate that too. You wanna talk about, from the, switching back to pretty down to earth, the cemetery wall?
Yeah, well, if we went out and looked at it, and the contractor brought to our attention, about another 40, I think we're doing about 60, 65 feet, another 40 feet to the east. You can see the wall bowed. We don't have to do it, but he's recommending you do it, and he'll reinforce it behind it. He's charging the same price per foot. And if it's, I think he said 18, if it's, I forgot how many feet that is exactly. But if it's less, it could be the same, whatever that turns out to be. We're trying to get to a stopping point. You can quit now, and it might hold, but we just thought if it bent in that area, it's probably gonna go in that area in a few years. So
When
we
you
thought, fix it while you're there.
When you say do it, you're talking about replacing, not some sort of a repair.
Well, what he's done, he kinda takes that off, he puts some blocks and fills it in with concrete, so if something bumps it or anything,
Yeah,
it's not
well,
moving.
when we had the part that fell down,
Yeah,
and that's what they've been working on.
yes.
And now we've got an area that's probably going to fall down.
In his opinion, yeah, you can see a bend in it, and I think there's about another 30 to 40 feet.
And the bid is, or the quote,
It's about 18,890. It can be less, that would be your max, if it turns out to be shorter per foot.
James, have you looked at that? So
Yes,
you were-
I have, and I know exactly what he's talking about. It is leaning. The wall, when it originally was built, was just stacked up bricks. It was all hollow on the inside. And as soon as it starts to move a little bit, it starts to go. It's not gonna sit there and take time. It's gonna start going.
So there's no rebar or anything in there currently in
No,
any of that?
absolutely not. No,
James
it's just
wasn't
bricks.
around.
It's just little bricks stacked up, if I remember.
And he put in a block and filled it with concrete,
Yeah.
so it's gonna be solid.
And so if we were to stop where we currently are and say in a few years the next section was to go, would it potentially damage what we've just replaced new?
We-
I know we probably
I'll let
can't
James
that,
answer,
but
we didn't really
you
talk
think
about
that
I
that.
don't think it would
affect it?
damage what
Yeah.
you put in. I
Okay.
don't think it would. I mean, it's just gonna,
Mike?
such a hard-headed bunch. You gotta turn it on. Stephen, that's your job. You're the electrical guy.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you, and again, it's just so that those watching online can hear.
So, with the new wall that's being put back in there, it'll be solid. The wall that's there now is just stacked up brick. It's hollow on the inside, and it don't take much to make it move. And when it does start to move, it just keeps moving. It's leaking water inside of it and what have you. The solid wall, if the existing wall was to fall down, I don't believe it would damage the new wall that's put up because it is solid.
Okay.
It's just, how much more is it gonna take? You know, we're gonna bring the contractor back, you know, it's just one of those things there that you're looking.
Can you remind, what did we pay for the rest, to rebuild what fell down?
Seemed like about 26,000.
Okay, and how many feet
I wanna
was it?
say that was 60 and this is 40,
Yeah,
but those are rough.
So does that get then everything west of the entrance done?
It doesn't go that far, I don't believe, but it gets, the rest looks solid.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah, this is
Okay.
where there's still a little, you can see a little sway in the wall.
I remember when we were talking about what we're gonna do on the part that fell down, and someone to my left, and I don't know which one of these guys it was, but asked about the condition of the rest of the wall and someone was talking about water getting in, that sort of thing. So we've got them here, they're all set up.
It's
They
never
can
gonna
do
be any
it.
cheaper.
Logically, it would probably be cheaper than waiting 3
Yeah.
years and then bringing them back.
It's gonna be cheaper even than waiting, I mean,
Yeah,
they're already
if
here,
they
you're not
move
paying a
out.
mobilization
Yeah.
cost for
Yeah.
them to come in, there's always gonna be a mobilization cost. This is the cheapest you're gonna get it as well. He's already here, got it set up, he looked like he has it tented so that he can be working when it's colder
Yeah.
outside, so.
It's actually hot in there. It's like a greenhouse.
Yeah,
For what, and just, I mean, I think this is an accurate statement. If you have a loved one in that cemetery, maintenance of that cemetery is important to you. And I think that's true everywhere.
As a Cudamoke cemetery growing up, it's very important to people.
Yeah.
Whether you hit a flower or something, it's very important.
Well, Judy and I are looking to pick our plots, and I want to make sure we got a good entrance.
I'll make a motion that we approve, extending the stone wall replacement at the cemetery wall, in the amount not to exceed $18,890.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Kevin seconds. Any further discussion?
So then what he's basically, then the rest of it you said is good, at least as far as he can tell at this
Yes.
point?
Yeah.
Gotcha. James, would you concur, I mean, you think that that's worth doing?
Yeah,
I mean-
I believe it would be.
Okay.
There was, something was done there, some work was previously done that caused the damage to start to cause that.
Gotcha, okay,
I think it was drainage or something.
gotcha, okay.
Anything else? All in favor of the motion being to finish the project at a cost not to exceed the quoted amount. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. I voted aye, by the way, sorry. Unanimous, aye. And then, speaking of drainage and all that, we got the Locust Street project.
This is a project you've been working on for a couple of years, as I understand it. And Darren talked about in December, we wanted to hit it, approve the grant in 2025. He had 3 bidders. Votes, Parga Construction, 290, 69150. Malta Creek with 443, 13194, and Het Construction with $327, $615. And he has an alternate. You can talk about that later. That'd be doing more cord work to the south. And I think, is that Elm going up? I think, not Elm, is it Elm?
Yeah, Elm goes in front of
Oh.
Darren's house, Locust is the
Yeah,
next one over.
yeah, and it's
Where Darren's
some cord work
office.
in there. You can decide that at a later date. This is a KDOT grant, 70/30. So our local share could probably be around $100,000, give or take. And then you've already paid for the design on it.
Do you know, I know when we looked at this initially, the bids came in higher than the estimate, so there was some of it that we were gonna have to cover 100%. Do you know what the grant amount was off the top of your head?
I don't off the top of my head.
Okay.
But you're correct, the bids were higher. But again, I think you're seeing that all over the
Yeah.
construction world. But when I talked to Darren today, and he couldn't make it today, but we just thought between 100, 125, depending on what you do, would be our local amount.
You ran through those numbers pretty quick, Mark. What, we've got the what Parga, was it? What's the-
Votes Parga.
Vote Parga. In front of us, what was the Het bid again?
$327,615.
Okay. So pretty big.
$37,000
chunk,
difference.
yeah. I don't think we don't have any choice but to do the project.
Yeah, you've had it planned for a couple of years now. And I think they're ready, they'll start maybe late February, 1st of March, they're ready to go, is what
Ready to
Darren
go.
said today.
Based on this, they don't plan on it taking very long, 'cause in the contract, it says all phases must be complete by April 15th,
Of what year?
2025.
I think once they get in,
Well,
they'll
and-
go ahead and,
Spoke earlier, so that was weather permitting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
whether, if you have weather days, they, of course, extend it.
Tim, Kevin, anything?
I don't think so.
You're looking for council motion to authorize the signing of the contract that's been proposed. Is that
Correct.
I'll make that motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Further discussion? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed, nay? Ayes have it. Don't let me get out of here till I sign that.
Right.
You look scared.
We have them. Yeah, I have them, Janet. Oh, I have it for him to sign.
Okay.
Okay. Well, I did point at you, so, yeah, okay. And back to you, Mark.
Okay, on the CUP, I think we're gonna put this, for Marion County Office Building Park Lot, we're gonna push that back 2 weeks.
Okay?
On the trail project, it's just something Zach brought up a couple weeks ago. I do not have anything from Darren. He could give me a proposal, but I think he's been sick also. And this, what Zach asked, and we talked about it at least one meeting ago, up to $5,000 on this trail grant you received to help write some easements in some design work. And Darren's agreed to that.
And to get it out to bid.
Yeah, get out to bid. So we'd say, it's tonight, if nothing else. We're gonna let you know it's going, and when he gets the agreement, we can bring it back. But I think you're all aware of it and in favor of it.
What's our timeline on that?
I think by
Completion
October 1, we need to
by,
have it done.
say completion by September, is what it said. Now, I guess we need to get some clarification if that's completion by September 1, or if that's completion by the end of September.
I think it was the end of September, for the most part. If you're in the
Yeah.
middle and getting close to done,
Right.
most people work with you.
Right.
If you haven't done anything, then they will get
Yeah.
on you.
Mark, would it make sense to keep this on the agenda?
Oh, we can. I just want you to know about it, and we're gonna get him going.
Yeah, I think Zach and I are kind of on the same page here, in that it's kind of almost been out of sight, out of mind, and we haven't made any progress that I'm aware of. And just want to make sure that and I don't mean to just carry it on the agenda forever.
No, we will. And Darren's aware of it, and I think we'll get going on it.
Okay, all right. Then the next matter is, well, we don't have other public comment, but we're gonna have our committee report, or council reports, and then we'll have public comment opportunity. So, start with you, Margot. You need the microphone.
Thank you. I gave you all a copy of the travel guide, just so you could see we have a lot in there. And I'm working on next year's now. I just wanted to tell you on that CUP, we actually had the public hearing last week. We're in the protest period, is 2-week protest period. And then we'll bring it to you next week for present our recommendation and have you do the final action on it. But that is in the works, so unless you have other questions, been kind of a long meeting, so I'll be short.
Thank you, Margot. James?
Yeah, hey, I just got one thing, that I'm gonna be putting some stuff in the packet next council meeting. Got some troublesome properties that people own and live out of state, and they're refusing service. We send them certified mail, and they just don't even pick it up. It comes back. There is an alternative way for the council to have someone served, and from talking to the city attorney, it would be good if you guys delegated that, so there's no gray area when I have them served, and we can do that by regular first-class mail, posting it on the property, even a phone call. It's just there's a second way if they refuse service. That way we can continue on with the cleaning of the property, and if there's any expenses on the city, it can be assessed to the property, even though the property owner refuses to acknowledge we exist. So that's all I got.
So you'll be bringing a proposal back?
Yes, I will put the code in because apparently the code reads that you guys could have it served a second way if they refuse the certified mail, And that could be delegated, since you've already delegated me to do the job, it could be delegated to me to serve it that way also.
And have you talked to Brian or Zach?
I have talked to Zach Strella.
So whatever you bring back, he will have said, yeah, that sounds good.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I can put part of the email that he sent me in there too, so that might make it easier to understand.
Thank you.
Yep.
Anyone have questions for Dan? Zach Hudlin?
No, police department.
Well, it's not a question, Mark maybe reach out. I wondered if, we've got the sign that measures your speed and tells you how fast you're going and what the speed limit is. And I don't know, do you guys just kind of move that around, basically, areas that you think people are kind of whipping through or whatever?
Pretty much.
But I was surprised.
Our plan is to move it a couple of times a year into basically problem areas of town where we had reports of people speeding or.
I wondered if we could move it over on East Main for that area by Eastmore Church and then that next block where people are, we've already established that although the sign says the speed limit is 55, the speed limit there is 35. And if you don't believe me, walk the other side of the street and look at the sign. And the state has conceded that that sign that they put there is wrong. So I'm wondering if we could put that thing over around, and it doesn't have to be, quickly, but at some point put that area in rotation.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't put it that far out, that close to the country club, because then we're trying to alert people of the speed limit that's getting ready to change.
My concern
somewhere
is
closer to Eastmore Church, we just have to find a property owner that's willing to let us park the trailer on their property for a little while.
I'll give you a couple of suggestions. We've got that 55-mile-an-hour sign has people accelerating at about the Eastmore Church to get up to 55 by that spot, and that spot is well within the city limits. And so that's what I'm trying to, because that's going to change to a 35-mile-an-hour sign as soon as the state does it.
Yeah.
Okay.
But to get something like past Ashley Drive, I don't know that that's gaining the city a whole lot, but if we could put it back by Eastmore Church, we just have to find a property owner, like I said, that's willing to let us put it there.
Is Ashley Drive the one that goes down like toward Todd Winter's house? Yeah, okay. Yeah, I would agree with you. It needs to be west of that.
Yeah, so like I said, we just have to find a property owner that's willing to let us park the trailer there, so. Currently, Brent Miles is where it's parked now.
Right.
So I just have to find somebody that's willing to let me.
Although, I mean, we've got a right-of-way easement.
Yeah, but depending on how long it sits there, it's gonna kill the grass underneath it, and I don't really wanna go kill somebody's grass either.
James will move it more. Okay.
Did the state say how long it'd take to get that sign in place?
My understanding, Mark, is they were gonna get to it.
I think Darren talked to their engineer.
Yeah.
I don't have a date, but they're aware, and I think they said they'd move the sign back.
My thought is just to call Joe Palick. I just haven't done it, but I thought just call Joe, and I'm sure it's not the highest thing on his priority list. Stephen?
Electrical has nothing.
You're going to a KPP thing tomorrow, right? Okay, there you go. Janet, anything?
No.
Mark?
No, what I add two things. Ben Moore, you have a work session on February 24th at 5 o'clock. Ben Moore wants to have his first meeting, informative meeting on historical districts. And he's open a couple nights that week. I wondered if you want to maybe have a meeting at 6:30 or 7, so that way you're gone one night, you're not interfering with the high school ball game or church night. If you want to just kind of come at 5 and, leave, I imagine Ben will take, he said about a 15, 20-minute presentation and answer questions. He'll have a PowerPoint, different things.
He's talking about the public meeting, so.
Yeah, he have a series of informative meetings.
We would have our study session, whatever, work session, and then after that could just go to the public information.
That way you're here one night instead of 2 different nights.
And that was on the 24th?
Yes. Does that sound like a plan, or you want to look at another night?
Works for me.
I like that idea.
Yeah, let's do that. that.
Okay, I'll let Ben know.
And then I'm not sure what, and maybe Ben has, you know, a way that he normally goes about notifying the public.
I'll
of
work
it,
with him
but
on
we
that.
need to make
Yeah,
sure
we
we
need to
get
let
the
people
word
know.
out. Yeah,
That's the whole goal, to get people here.
yeah.
And the second thing, and I'll commend Marion on this, Mayor Specialties in town doing their cleaning of the sewer lines. I think you do a third of the town every year. That's excellent. Whoever started that program years ago, it keeps you clean and eliminates a lot of, hopefully, backups.
Have they said anything more about when they're gonna get out here and work on the Luda Creek?
They're in town, we'll check with them. They're
Yeah,
in
because
town.
they said they would work on
Yeah.
opening that up, so.
I'll talk to Tim tomorrow.
Okay.
But I saw the truck go by, and so I know they're in town. I'm not sure how long, but again, that's different cities, you don't do it, and then all of a sudden you try to catch up. You guys are on a regular maintenance program, which is commendable.
Good. Thank you to whoever came up with that idea. Tim, we'll start at your end.
I don't have anything tonight.
Kevin?
Nope.
I don't have anything.
Nothing.
Nothing. Public comment? Going once, going twice? Motion to adjourn?
I move we adjourn this meeting.
Is there I'll second. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. We are adjourned.
You just have 2 hour meetings.
Nobody wants to talk.